Hello, everyone. My name is Paul, and welcome back to the new news. I hope that everyone is doing well. I hope that you're safe, your families are safe, and that your friends are safe, of course. And it's Friday. We officially have made it to the weekend for those of us that are in a safe place. So you made it through the work week or another school week. And it's one step closer to the summer. It's one step closer to a little bit nicer weather. I'm not a big fan of winter and the cold, so I am looking very much forward to a nice weekend and hopefully some much warmer weather coming up here, at least for where I'm at. So I hope that some of you get to enjoy that too. Maybe get to go outside for a little bit and hang out and go do some things you like outdoors, and kind of get outside and get away from a lot of the bad stuff going on. I know a lot of us, including myself, have the news going constantly. It seems we're constantly reading about stuff, what's going on, and we need to get away from that every once in a while. And so with that being said, we will not be streaming tomorrow night. We have some prior engagements that we made before we even started the channel, so we will not be streaming tomorrow night. So with that, just remember that we'll be covering 48 hours worth of news on Sunday's stream. So just want to make that clear. But in other good news, we have a new donation link in the description below, and there are a ton of donation links below, but this one actually got put above Even Come Back Alive, which directly supports the war effort in Ukraine, and we'll have more on that in just a minute when we get into the news. This is going to be really awesome, so go ahead and check out the donation links below. We don't have it just for Ukraine, but other humanitarian efforts. There are millions of people around the world that need our help, and we want to be the news that gives back. So every single stream is going to have a fundraiser once we're large enough to actually monetize and put fundraisers directly onto the stream. And until that point, there will always be donation links in the description below on every single stream. We're never going to be doing super chats. I have a full-time job. I'm not worried about the money here. I'm just wanting to help people throughout the world and deliver the best news I physically can. Sometimes we're even beating out some of those major news places too, so it's kind of cool to see that. But with that, we're going to go ahead and roll right into the news. And so we're actually going to start here in Kyiv, and that's because President Zelensky invites Chancellor Olaf Scholz to visit on May the 9th. So this is something that has been talked about pretty widespread. If you watch DW, for instance, they've talked about it a lot, being a German news channel, but Germany has had some tensions between Germany and Ukraine just because Germany relies so heavily, especially on like the Russian energy sector. They get most of their imports from Germany for their energy sector. They haven't been as forthcoming with a lot of equipment. They've made a lot of changes, but there's still a long way to go. And one of the things is that nobody has actually gone from Germany to visit Kyiv or Ukraine in general since the war began. And this is something that they've been kind of avoiding a little bit, but it's very symbolic to invite the Chancellor on May the 9th. And there was a phone call between the President of Germany and between President Zelensky. Apparently there was a lot going on, and that was a lot discussed there in that conversation. But inviting Chancellor Olaf Scholz to Kyiv on May the 9th symbols a lot of things. First of all, Russia on the May the 9th celebrates victory in Europe. So May the 9th is the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany. And they celebrate it with big military parades in Red Square. They have since the end of the war, and they continue to do this even though they're no longer the Soviet Union. There's a lot of nostalgia of the Soviet Union, especially for the older generations that remember the Soviet Union as being part of better times almost for Russia. And that's why you see a lot of Soviet ideology, a lot of Soviet symbology, the Soviet flag, the hammer and sickle. You see a lot of the patches, a lot of people talking about the Soviet Union, statues of Lenin going up. And there's a fondness even with Putin. And bringing Olaf Scholz, who is in charge of Germany, the former nation of Nazi Germany, but until it was destroyed, the Nazi Party was destroyed, symbolizes both Germany has changed, one, it now fights on the side of freedom, because there is no Nazi Party in Germany. That got stamped out by the Allies. And secondly, it's symbolizing the fact that, yeah, you can have a big parade, but the West supports us, and even Germany is supporting us and coming here and visiting us despite everything that you've said. And this will go into some rhetoric that we'll talk about a little bit later when we get on to the international news, because there is some interesting rhetoric coming from the Kremlin regarding the Western countries right now. But we do know that this is occurring. We have this right here from Ukraine World. So very interesting. And I think it's about time that they actually come and visit. But to get to the news regarding that new link, and I'm actually not even going to announce what it is because President Zelensky is going to do it for us. This actually officially launched yesterday, and this is from President Zelensky's personal account. So we're going to go ahead and take a look here. He does do this address in English, so you will be able to we won't need translations here. So let's take a look.
Today, the whole free world got united around Ukraine. Countries, companies, international organizations, and most importantly, people. Now you too are among them. Thank you. Only together we have the potential to stop the war that Russia has started and to rebuild what Russia has destroyed. Together we can help freedom defeat tyranny. This fundraising platform is a part of Global United 24 initiative that has been launched to support Ukraine. Here, in one click, you can donate funds to protect our defenders, to save our civilians, and to rebuild Ukraine. All funds will be transferred to the National Bank of Ukraine and allocated to the relevant ministries. Reports will be updated every 24 hours. Every donation matters for victory. Donate to protect. Donate to save. Donate to rebuild. Today, Ukraine is fighting not only for its own freedom, but for the freedom of the whole democratic world. We will always remember your contribution to the victory of Ukraine, to the victory of freedom. Thank you.
And so there you have it, everybody. United 24. It is launched by the government of Ukraine. It's just been personally announced by President Zelensky. And this is actually the top donation link that we have put. Ukraine is the top section in the donation fundraiser links, and this is the top one there. And with this, they do have an official Twitter just for the United 24. And this is it here. If you guys want to go check it out, U24 _gov _UA at Twitter. And here is their official website. So if you go here, you can see that he's not kidding. It is literally one click. It's a very well done website. I'm very happy with it. Of course, he has different things going on here. And it's in several different languages, English and Ukrainian. But you can go down here, click defense and demining. So this goes to EOD removal. This goes to the troops and giving them the equipment they need, buying the equipment they need. You can transfer it with credit card, bank transfers, crypto. Same thing with medical aid, and same with rebuilding efforts. So you can, no matter what you believe, if you believe in pacifism and you don't want to donate towards the actual, fighting going on there, you can donate to those humanitarian efforts. This is something that we've been doing with the other donation links as well. They are still operating, of course, but if you want to send this directly to Ukraine, to the actual nation itself and to the departments there, you can do that now. This is something that we can vet. It's not gonna be a complicated process. So go check that out. It's in the description below, in the description of the video, and go help out Ukraine. And don't forget about the other countries, though. There are millions of people in other places that still need help, and we'll get more into that a little bit later. But that is the big news, the new addition there. It's also on our Discord under the donation link section. So as we move further along the front, we start getting into the news of the fighting going on, and that is because reportedly 11 Russian snipers were actually captured up by Kharkiv. And so this is something that is being said, reported by the SBU. We can't confirm this because it's very hard to confirm anything really coming out of Ukraine, both Ukrainian side and Russian. We don't have anyone there on the ground. We don't have anyone interviewing the SBU. So we're getting all this stuff from other sources. But that is reportedly what's going on. And it wouldn't be surprising, especially as we move further south, because we're starting to see Russian forces may actually be on the retreat inside this region. So advancing Ukrainian forces are actually they're conducting a counteroffensive here in the Kharkiv region, and they've made a lot of gains over the last few weeks. Even since this offensive began by Russia, they basically stalled and were pushed back. We've seen towns being liberated and the circle being pushed further and further away from the city of Kharkiv. And now we're starting to see that Russian forces may not have only just stalled, they may be on the back foot. They are possibly retreating because they're wandering into these locations and finding equipment and everything, much like when the Russians retreated from the northwest of Kyiv. The same kind of thing is happening now, and the Russians seem to be possibly folding. We can't confirm this. They could be just retreating, do a tactical retreat, returning back towards some stronger defensive lines where they're not as far away from logistical support and shortening up the supply lines. That's the thing they could be doing. But the amount of equipment and the haste that they seem to be retreating does not suggest that. We'll take a look here.
Псковский десант, пацаны. Хе-хе. Пидоры, блядь. Пидоры, блядь, мародеры. Тачки, блядь, всякая хуйня. Лестницы, блядь.
Капон нахуй отдай. Отдай ружье.
Да.
Прогулочка, конечно.
Да, блядь, пизда нахуй прогулочка. Все, разбирай этим пидоров, блядь. Спальники, рюкзаки, блядь, вещи. Ты понял? Даже десантура это ж, блядь. Андоны, блядь, побросали все, потекали нахуй. Вот вам и Харьковская область. Пидорасы. Шайтан труба, блядь, и та загорела. Пидоры, блядь.
So as you can see, they left in pretty good haste, and it looks like they were also being shelled too. So that could have been a good reason for them to maybe change positions, but they didn't. They didn't wait around, that's for sure. And that's a possibility that Russian forces maybe have been so badly beaten back and decimated by Ukrainian troops that they have no choice but to retreat at this point. As we move further south, we know there's been heavy fighting in Izium, and we just haven't seen a whole lot of footage coming out of there. But the heavy fighting continues even in today and as we speak. But today it was claimed that at least one Russian tank and two BMP-2s were also destroyed. BMP-2s are just light armored infantry fighting vehicles that is used in mass by the Russian military. You can actually punch through them with a 50 cal. They're not very well armored at all. But let's take a look here. So there it is for you. So definitely looks like some kills there. We just I can't confirm whether or not that is something that, I mean, we just don't have enough information. Once again, we don't have anyone embedded with them to report back to us and say, yeah, yep, that happened. But this is what's going on, and this is what's getting reported at this point near Izium. This could be a couple days old and just coming out right now. That is something that we'll see as Ukrainian forces are operating heavily and conducting counteroffensives, such as near Kherson. Unless it's coming out of the occupied areas, there's there are pretty significant delays just because you want Ukrainian forces to be well out of the region that you're reporting on by the time that you report it. Just for security concerns, you don't want to be reporting their troop movements in real time. It's an information goldmine if you do, and that could lead, for instance, to Russian shelling on Ukrainian troops and causing losses for Ukraine. Russia, however, conducted another strike on Kramatorsk. It's a pretty large explosion. We don't know any other information other than this. We don't know the damage, the casualties, or any of the targets at this point. We just know that another strike has occurred, and if we can, we'll get a follow-up on Sunday as to more information on this if it does come out. So take a look here.
Держись.
Я ебал, Валюх. Саня, здесь присядь, блядь. Сейчас Рома тоже.
And as we go further south here, we start to see things such as the use of Switchblade drones. Switchblade drones is something that's been highly talked about. And this is something that we have seen before. Or I shouldn't say that. This is something that we are expecting. The Switchblade 300 has been sent to Ukraine. It was one of the first packages of Switchblade drones sent there. And we're starting to see it pop up. This is the first recording of a Switchblade actually in action. So let's go ahead and take a look. We don't know exactly where this is at. It's somewhere along this Eastern Front today. But let's take a look. So it has some copyright music there, but take a look here. So this is a Russian defensive position. They have a couple L-shaped machine gun nests there. Some machine gun trenches. They're just doing their daily thing. Probably digging there, from what it seems like, or having a smoke break. And there it is. You can just barely see it if we go back here. So, if you take a look, you can see this thing moving right here. You'll see it hit here. And you're going to see it up by that white dot on the road as it comes streaking in. So, and then it impacts and detonates. And so, as soon as I'm running, I would too. But the Switchblade drone is a kamikaze drone, is the best way it can be described. Similar to kamikaze pilots during World War II for Japan, this drone has a very long loiter time, and it can search out targets, and then not to get into too specifics, because I don't think any of the specifics have been disclosed at this point. Basically, you can engage a target in the front portion of the kamikaze drone, as well as like all the optics to use to fly it and actually look around with a really nice camera, believe it or not. There's a crush switch in it, and it detonates, it explodes, destroys all the fancy, high-tech, top-secret equipment, and also destroys your target. You can fly it directly into it. It's a guided munition, precision-guided munition that can be carried in a backpack. It basically launches itself out of a tiny mortar tube. It's really cool. It's basically a little bit lower tech version of the hunter-killer drones from Call of Duty Black Ops 2, for anyone that knows. And as a result of this, the Russian forces have captured a used Switchblade drone. Captured in quotations, considering it's not much intel or good. Because, believe it or not, when these things blow up, all of the fancy stuff blows up with it. So all most of the actual frame survives. Most of the actual airframe survives, and all that's left though is the basic radio components, the same things that you could find in an RC model aircraft. This is commercial items. Now, some things are getting reported here of it being a Phoenix Ghost. Now, the Phoenix Ghost isn't confirmed at all. This is one of those black projects, is what it would be called, where it's not, the U.S. isn't going to release any of this information. We're never going to see it unless Ukraine films it being used and its troops using it. We're never going to know what this looks like. It's top secret. That's just not going to happen. Unless Ukraine says, okay, let's show the world what this thing is, we're not seeing it. So anyone that you're hearing about this being a Phoenix Ghost, it's not. It's a Switchblade. This is a Switchblade. I can tell you from experience. This is a Switchblade drone, a Switchblade 300. But as you can see, most of this front section is gone. That's because it impacts the target, but most of the airframe survives. It detonates the cool optics and the camera and the explosives. They said they shot this down. I don't think so. Considering half of the aircraft is missing, and it's the half that matters. So, they didn't get anything out of that but a destroyed RC car, essentially, or destroyed RC plane. And I want to point something out that I've been thinking about while I've been doing this, and that's actually to go back up here to Kramatorsk. This strike is something that we actually showed yesterday, and it is reported on May the 5th at 3:51 p.m. So, I am actually going to be deleting this and correcting this on screen. Another strike that we know of did not hit Kramatorsk today. That was a false report, and I apologize. Hopefully we will improve, but that is a false report. That did indeed happen yesterday, and we also reported on it yesterday. So, moving on from that and moving on to back over to the Luhansk region, there's more Russian equipment on the move in the Luhansk region. And this comes as Russian forces continue to pour its resources into trying to maintain that momentum. So a lot of nations currently are assessing that Russia's offensives have stalled. Their forces have stalled. We saw this in Izium. We saw this in Kharkiv. And now along this entire front, it is stalled. We know that they're moving slowly. This could be very deliberately. This could be the Russian forces trying not to outrun their supply lines, because when they did that in the north, it ended in failure. And they are trying not to do the same thing again. So they're being much more methodical, but they're also getting into very stiff resistance. And most of these forces are thrown together from already decimated forces. They're not being rotated. They're being thrown immediately back into the fight. So you have half of a battalion tactical group and another half of a battalion tactical group, because all of their friends got demolished in the north of Kyiv. You smash them together, and now you have one battalion tactical group at relative full strength that you can throw in there. But they're demoralized. They are not. They are tired. They have no morale. Most of their friends got destroyed up in the areas around Kyiv and Chernihiv. And they're immediately being thrown back into the meat grinder. So they're not combat effective. Even if you have the equipment, quote unquote, they're not effective. And that's why we're seeing places like Rubizny and Popasna has bogged down the Russian forces. They really haven't made any significant advances along this entire front. There are some, but nothing really significant enough to claim any kind of success. In fact, it's rather just a stalemate. And more Western equipment is still coming. And as we move down to Donetsk, smoke is currently visible from occupied Donetsk. And we don't know what was hit, but we do know that Ukraine is using the Western artillery, and it's already in the artillery it has been using for the duration of the war, that former Soviet stockpile stuff, to great effect. We've seen them hit plenty of ammo depots before, and we continue to see them hit more things here. We don't know what this is, but judging by the size of the explosion, whatever it was important. Likely probably another ammunition depot, maybe a field ammo depot. They have to have enough ammunition up by the front lines in a large enough quantity to just continue fighting. Sustained engagements take a lot more ammo than what you think they do. So your combat kit, your actual combat load, does not last very long. you do need resupplied. And if they're in continuous fighting, especially in Donetsk, where we do know that there's continuous fighting, then they probably have a lot staged near that front lines. And I can imagine that probably got hit by an artillery shell. So let's take a look.
Что-то загорелось.
So pretty large cloud of smoke, pretty large explosion, whatever it was. And so that leads us down into Mariupol and the topic of the day. And that is the fact that I said this yesterday, and the UN was going to Mariupol despite Russia breaking the ceasefire agreement. Essentially, they announced it, but they didn't stop anything they were doing. They're still assaulting the Azimuth Stall. They're still bombarding it. And they're still attempting to storm it. Keep in mind, the Azimuth Stall, underneath it's like seven stories of concrete reinforced bunkers built to protect the 40,000 workers at the Azimuth Stall from nuclear strike during the Cold War. So it's not going to be an easy task for Russian forces to clear this thing. Anyway, so they're just trying to blow it up. And I said yesterday that I don't think Russia's going to stop just because the UN shows up this time. And that has turned out to be the case. The United Nations did conduct evacuations while under sustained fire by Russian forces. Since there was a continuing bombardment, it actually hit an Azov vehicle. It hit an Azov car while it was on its way to pick up civilians from the Azov Stall, I believe, after making a trip already. And this ended up killing one Ukrainian soldier and injuring an additional 6. The footage coming from that is too graphic to be shown on stream. But we do have some photos regarding this. That is the vehicle that was hit. Looks like it was a truck. Took a direct hit from an artillery round. Once again, 6 injured, 1 killed. And they reportedly, the UN was able to evacuate roughly 500 people from Mariupol on this trip. We don't know how many of that was from the Azov Stall. We don't know how many of that was from the main city. About 100,000 people still remain in the city, and an unknown number inside the Azov Stall. So we just don't have enough information regarding how those efforts were ongoing. But reportedly, the last field hospital during this bombardment was also destroyed in the Azov Stall. We know that there are likely casualties as a result. We don't know how many. We don't know how many wounded were inside of this last remaining field hospital inside the compound. But that is yet another blow. And once again, those people that were in those field hospitals are non-combatants now. They are protected under Geneva Convention. So just hitting a field hospital is kind of a war crime. I don't know exactly how that would be. It'd be something you could probably fight in the International Criminal Court, considering there are combatants in this area. But it's if you're so disabled you can't fight anymore, which is what anyone in a field hospital would be, then you're a non-combatant now and you cannot be fired upon. So, and we do have some more information here regarding that coming from Nexta. So he said this, Antonio Gutierrez, who's the Secretary General of the UN, said that 500 more people were evacuated from Mariupol and the Azov Stall. So I said it yesterday, there have been times where the United Nations did go and evacuate people under fire. And once again, today was one of those times, and that's usually not a good situation. We do know that the UN evacuated foreign citizens during the Rwandan genocide back in, I believe, 1993. So that was another instance. Somalia was another instance. In fact, a number of UN peacekeepers were killed there, and that was what actually led to the U.S. sending the Marines into Somalia to protect those UN convoys, and also the Black Hawk Down incident to follow that in 1994. And Russia, despite all of what it's doing and actually firing essentially at the UN, considering they were there, they're filming propaganda while doing this. They filmed yet another propaganda video using their grads and their artillery. And here it is. We have it. Take a look. I'm not even going to have the audio here. So, see, there's just Russian forces. Those are Katyusha rockets. They look like they're some of the smaller variants. But these are from BM-21 Grad systems. They're saturation bombardment. I think these are TPK-30s, which are the main artillery gun for Russia. But yeah, it's just them firing artillery at Mariupol, of course, because that's where a large amount of their artillery is. They just think about all of the firepower they're putting in a single day on the Azimuth Stall that they could use somewhere else. They could desperately use it somewhere else, but this city is so important, and taking this one bit of land is so important to them. And it's so strategic because of that land bridge between them and Crimea, that they are dedicating a massive amount of troops and equipment to just still taking Mariupol. And the amount of punishment the Azov Stall has taken, and that the Azov Battalion and Ukrainian Marines have taken over the last 3 months at this point, is astonishing. And they're continuing to fight. And that is absolutely... There will be a lot of books written about what has been done in Mariupol and the defense of the city. No doubt that is going to go down not just in history, but in legend. And with that, that is actually all of the news inside the country of Ukraine. But there is plenty outside of the country. And so we're actually going to start down here in Belgorod. And that's because it's a very good possibility Russia may have just dropped a bomb on its own civilians. So the citizens there in Belgorod reported the fact that there was a large explosion after a Russian jet was seen flying over these. Of course, these reports are unconfirmed, and I don't think Russia would ever admit to doing this. But we do have a couple of things here. So, rather large crater. That's definitely something that would be like an airborne or a cruise missile. So, rather large crater outside Belgorod. Let's take a look here.
Такая вот дорога у нас сейчас новая. Не трогать запчасти. Не трогать. И вот такая ямка. Вместо дороги. Вот такая.
So, could you imagine if they had accidentally dropped this in the city? Like, just imagine the damage that would have caused if it was in town. It's astonishing if it was in any village or in the actual city of Belgrade. And that's not just one of those things that you can just go, whoops. Like, you can't just do that with when you're talking about, several 1,000-kilogram explosives. I mean, the fabs, you have like the Fab 500, which is kind of your medium-sized, bomb, the 500 kilograms. But you also have the Fab 2000 and the Fab 3000, which is 2,000 and 3,000 kilograms. Massive ordnance, massive amounts of damage. I mean, these things are just nothing but giant cases of metal packed with explosives. They are massive explosives. And they do immense damage. You can see the amount of damage they do. Just look at the Azimuth Stall when they've done bombing runs on it. It is insane. And this pilot basically just hit the wrong button in his own country. So that's astonishing, to say the least. Up in Kursk, we see yet another large fire outside the city. I don't say yet another one as if there was another one in Kursk, but there's been a weird amount of major fires in Russia lately. Now, this could be coincidence. Some of it not. So a couple of them were at a couple of rocket research facilities for the Russian government. We know at least one where some people in the eastern part of the country were not very happy with the idea of being conscripted for the war, and they threw Molotov cocktails at the military registration office. But there has been a lot of fires, a lot of major fires in industrial plants and warehouses and you name it, and it's starting to raise suspicions about the actual population's feelings about what's going on in Russia. And we can't confirm any of that simply because there's not a lot of information coming out. For all intents and purposes, the Iron Curtain has once again fallen across Europe. And but we do get some limited information, so let's take a look. So once again, that's no small fire. That's nobody having, like a little bonfire, roasting some marshmallows and for some s'mores. You know what I mean? Like it's a fire. It's a raging fire. And we'll get to more of that here in a minute. But this is the concerning rhetoric I was talking about earlier, and that's because the Kremlin has stated, and this is coming from Dmitry Peskov, who's the spokesman of the Kremlin. And this is coming from the Russian news agency TASS. And they are saying that during an interview, Dmitry Peskov has stated that Poland poses a threat to Ukraine's territorial integrity and must be fought by Belarus and Russia. The country invading Ukraine is saying that Poland poses a threat to Ukraine's territorial integrity, which blows my mind that anyone has the absolute gall to say this. But, and I'm not even kidding. We have the link here. There is the article, Russian news agency, TASS. And I can switch it over here to Russian if you would like. TASS.ru. Translate here. But just in case that article ever gets taken down, we have it archived for y'all. So if you guys ever are wondering, here it is on the at the same time. He refrained from commenting on remarks by the Belarusian president to the Associated Press. So they're really starting to set up. The rhetoric is really starting to set up, not a de-escalation at all. In fact, it's a lot of escalatory comments coming from very high-level officials and just based on the actions that are being conducted. I mean, once again, they didn't even stop shelling the Azimuth Stall for the United Nations. And that says a lot. There's 193 nations inside the United Nations. 193 countries. And you didn't stop for a single one of them to come in and save him, to even save face, to even for the camera do this. So, and once again, Poland poses a threat to Ukraine's territorial integrity. For those that I probably haven't explicitly said this to, we do try to be non-biased in the news, but the stuff that we have seen for this news and the amount of evidence that we have seen, we think it would be very indecent, and that none of us in good conscience could not have a bias for Ukraine. There is no, from personal experience as well. I was in the Marine Corps and I was in Iraq and Syria, and the horrendous amount of things that I have seen are pale in absolute comparison to any of my own personal experiences. So we cannot in good conscience not support Ukraine. And once again, it is absolutely mind-numbing that what is being said. And there's some expectations about how May 9th will go. May 9th will be a very big day. And the fact is that May 9th symbolizes Russia's, what Russia is probably going to be doing next. Are they going to escalate the conflict? Are they going to declare actual war? Nobody knows. Are they going to declare victory? There are several options, but Russian state media and what is being said by officials is really starting to give us an indication. When you start talking about Poland needs to be fought by Russia and Belarus, Poland is a NATO country. That is more escalations toward NATO. And it's very concerning. And it's a very good possibility that he's going to declare all-out war, simply because Putin is running into manpower shortages here, and he needs the ability to conscript more troops. But that puts Russia into a total war mode where they can conscript forces, push them into the front using the Stalin ideology of quantity has a quality all of its own, and hope that fixes the problem, and actually turn what's left of their tattered economy into an industrial war machine and pump out tanks like it's 1944. That is kind of what they're probably going to try and aim to do. Successful? I don't think so, but I don't think it'll matter much. But that is one of the good possibilities that he will attempt to do. And we also know regarding the May 9th Victory Parade that it's going to include the Doomsday Plane. The Doomsday Plane, is a quote-unquote. It's an IL-80, and what it does is it actually carries Russia's top government officials as well as military officials in the event of a nuclear war. That is what it does. It's the Air Force One of Russia, essentially. That's all it is. It's just considered the Doomsday Plane because its only purpose is nuclear war, and it is going to be escorted. But there you go. That is the IL-80. The last time it was shown was in 2010. And also their ICBMs are also taking kind of the lead, supposedly, in the parade, as we've seen from the rehearsals. And as we continue here in Russia, we actually move further south here, right down here along the Georgian border. And that's because there's a massive fire here. And I'm going to try and pronounce this. Once again, my pronunciation is terrible. Vladikovkaz. And this massive fire erupted in another industrial compound. And once again, they've seen a ton of fires, major fires, over the last few weeks, which is really starting, once again, to raise some questions. So let's take a look. So there it is, yet another large fire there in Russia. Two going on simultaneously. And as we move into the rest of Europe, Berlin has, the Berlin police specifically, has banned military and nationalistic materials for May 8th and 9th. And this is including Ukrainian things such as their military uniforms, flags, their patches of military units, military unit insignias, as well as Soviet and Russian military insignia signs, everything else. Because they're trying to do it as fair as they can, because you can't just completely isolate just the Russian people. That's not really very fair. So they're just banning any kind of celebrations and symbology for those days, knowing that that is coming up and that that is going to be a big deal in Europe, period. And there was a shootout in Hamburg on May the 4th. So roughly 80 to 100 people. It was between some bikers and some German between some migrants and some German biker gangs. And that left 4 people wounded, and so far 15 arrests have been made. Take a look here.
علي قوسوها.
So, no deaths were reported, however, so hopefully those 4 people do make a speedy recovery and that the police can get down to the bottom of the incident. In Madrid today, 2 dead and 18 are injured after a large explosion rocked a 4-story building that was being renovated down in downtown central Madrid. So, we don't know exactly what the cause was, but there is the damage there to the 2nd floor of that building, or one of the floors, one of the higher floors there. I can't tell you what floor it is because it looks like part of it may be missing. And there appears to be a video here. The cause of the explosion is not currently known, so hopefully they can kind of figure out what happened there, and hopefully those people do make a recovery, and the 2 people who were killed, their families are able to mourn in peace there. And as we start to shift closer and closer to the Middle East here, it is reported that Turkey may be receiving shipments of stolen grain from Ukraine. Places such as the Kherson region have been seeing a lot of agricultural equipment and their stockpiles of food being stolen by Russian forces, transported to Crimea, and then apparently a ship was loaded with this stolen grain and departed underneath a Syrian flag. Syria is a country that is supported by Russia. They actually conduct military operations in that country. And apparently this isn't the first time it's happened. Another delivery was previously done on the 23rd of April. This is happening down here in Fenique. And we are getting it from this source here, translated over here to English. But apparently that is all the information for the ship here. Syrian bulk carrier Phoenicia. So, do with that information as you will. But that is what we know regarding this. This has not been very widely reported, and there's not a whole lot that we can add to it. We can't even confirm it at this point, but it is a possibility, and that draws into question what Turkey's true standpoint is with Russia They've been very vocal and they've been very supportive. I mean, the Bayraktar TB2 drone that has done effective work against Russian forces is a Turkish-made drone. And they are a NATO country, but there is that would draw up some questions as to, are you war profiteering off of this? What's the edge here? So once again, you can't confirm, but it is a possibility at this point. Armenia and Yerevan, we see continuing protests. In fact, there were several clashes with police today, and many people were detained, including the former chief of police of Yerevan himself. So we do have a couple of images coming out today. Let's take a look. And there he is. We saw him in the video as well. You know, there's a lot of people that are grabbing and pulling here. I'm really surprised that none of these cops have just been decked in the face yet. I'm really kind of waiting for it to happen, but I just haven't seen it yet in any of these videos. They kind of all just kind of get grabbed and carried off. And there's a lot of like tugging back and forth between protesters and the police. But yeah, I'm really surprised. I just haven't seen a video of one of these cops just getting decked one good time in the face. It's always just getting pulled around. So interesting. I don't know how that would go in Armenia. I don't know exactly how just from how their police dress and military uniform. I don't think it'd go very well for whoever did that. So I'm not recommending it to anybody, but just a casual observation by a outsider, I guess. And as we move further south, we can actually take a look over here. So in Alad, which is in Israel, and so there was an attack yesterday there in Alad, another terror attack, and initially it was reported that the individual was killed who was conducting the attack. That was later retracted and replaced by stating there are 2 suspects in this. They are still at large. They continue to be at large today. And both of the attackers were reportedly Palestinians from the Jenin refugee camp in the West Bank. And they did release their information here. So they are currently looking for these 2 men who are still at large. So if you live in Israel or a neighboring country or a country that these men may flee to, please let the authorities know if you see them. And up in Iraq here, we actually start up here along the Tigris. So the Tigris River is one of 2 rivers that flows in Iraq, the other being Euphrates. And Iraq is in the middle of a drought, which I know is kind of ironic considering it's a desert country, but they are in a drought, and the water levels of the Tigris have dropped extremely low. It's a very sharp decrease in the water there. We can actually see this here.
في وسط نهر دجلة. هذا جسر الجمهوري. وين المي؟ المي وينه؟ بعد المي وينه؟ وين المي؟
So there it is. The Tigris River is very low, and very low indeed. I've seen river boats go on this thing. It's not a very small river, and that guy looks like he's running on water. I mean, it's extremely low, and that's not very good because these rivers are vital. This is where Mesopotamia began. This is where the cradle of civilization is for a reason. Because these two rivers here are where the agriculture comes in. You don't see farms in the middle of the desert all the way out here, do you? No. We zoom in here, you see tons of farmland. And if these rivers dry up, if these rivers continue to dry, I mean, that irrigation system starts becoming more and more ineffective. That leads to, one, of course, you have water insecurities, which Iraq has enough insecurities as is. Security, literally you can't. It has defense issues. It has ongoing rebellions. The Islamic State. You have coalition forces and stuff going back and forth with things like Kataib Hezbollah. You have the Turks and the Kurds currently up in the north that are duking it out right now, and there's already concerns with water insecurities and food insecurities to some of these places, and that's only going to exacerbate the problem. So that is a huge concern. And if the Tigris is looking like that, the Euphrates is not probably very far off. So very concerning. As we move further south, a couple of foreigners were actually killed. So one Danish citizen was killed and another one injured in the Kuk province yesterday. They hit basically an IED that was reportedly made by the Kurdistan Workers' Party stationed there in that district. So the routes that they were taking that were not agreed with by authorities, they went there. They were tourists, and they went into a mined area. There are tons of these. There are entire belts of IEDs. Some of them are miles long, and they're just not cleared. It's not safe. The wars there have really taken a toll on where it's safe and where it's not, and it will be decades before some of these areas get cleared at all, if they are at all. So it's very unfortunate. Those are the two individuals there. So sorry really sorry to hear about their losses. I hope my condolences go out with their families as well. And here in the Kashmir, 3 militants were killed during a counterterrorism operation there in the Jammu and the Kashmir. So they were militants of the pro-Pakistani group Hezb Mujahideen. And they, I mean, there is a lot of Indian counterterrorism operations against pro-Pakistani groups in the Kashmir. The Kashmir is a flashpoint in the world. Much like Ukraine is now a flashpoint between the West and the East. This isn't the only place where nuclear war is a concern for anybody. Not that it's a huge concern overall. The likelihood is still very low. But the Kashmir and Jammu provinces are contested between Pakistan, which is a Muslim majority country, and India, which is a Hindu majority. And not only is there religious tensions, but there are tensions in this region because neither of this is claimed. It is actually jointly occupied by both. And so India is fighting pro-Pakistani forces and militants in this area, while Pakistan is fighting pro-Indian terrorists in this area, terrorists, quote unquote, because depending on how, it's all about the perspective. If you're from India, they're not terrorists. If you're from Pakistan, they are. If you're from Pakistan, these guys that were just killed were not terrorists, but in India they are. So this is a flashpoint because both Pakistan and India are nuclear countries. They both maintain a nuclear arsenal. So that is a concern and that is a flashpoint, but no, so far there hasn't been any serious flare-ups in the region, just counterinsurgency in the region of the Jammu and Kashmir. So moving on from that, where you actually drop down here to Sri Lanka, and that's because the president of Sri Lanka has declared a state of emergency taking effect at midnight tonight. So it's actually already in effect. And so this is said to be taking place in the interest of public security, quote unquote. There is widespread food shortages, fuel shortages, blackouts, medical shortages. That in fact there are life-saving operations that cannot be performed because Sri Lanka is so desperately broke it can't afford anything. It does not have the foreign exchange to buy any of its necessary imports, and the president has been held up in his mansion there in Colombo, at his residence, and barricaded in there for, 2 months now since we first reported on it? At least a month and a half at this point. So they've cut off most of social media. We know that. We actually reported on that. And so it's starting to look there are grim times there in Sri Lanka. There are very wide-scale protests and rallies going on. They're calling for everything from him to step down as president and for a new government to take control to prison, to put it lightly. Prison sentences, some harsh ones. So it's a very, very volatile situation in the nation of Sri Lanka. This is its worst economic depression since it's become an independent country. So very concerning there. And hopefully India has been sending aid to them. They sent over 6,000, I think, barrels of diesel fuel, or 6,000 gallons of diesel fuel, something like that. It was a crazy amount. And also food and medical supplies. So hopefully that can continue and more aid is received there in Sri Lanka. Try and stem it and kind of regulate those tensions a little bit and help people in need, obviously. There's a lot of people right now that have a lot of insecurities there. And Taiwan has yet another incursion by Chinese aircraft, military aircraft, inside of its air defense zone. So 18 Chinese aircraft entered Taiwan's air defense space today. We do not know the information. This isn't an uncommon occurrence. There are a lot of incursions by the Chinese Air Force into Taiwan's air defense zones that you just never hear about. Same thing with like Russian flights off the coast of Alaska. Like that's to the point it just doesn't make the news anymore. 18 is a large number of aircraft, though. That is a large number of military aircraft to be conducting an incursion at the same time. China does not formally recognize Taiwan as a country. In fact, there are a lot of reasons for that. Both of the countries actually view themselves as being true China. Back before China was actually a communist country, the government in Taiwan was actually in control of China. They are the federal Chinese government. The civil war in China was won by the communists, and so the federal Chinese went and they formed their own place down in Taiwan. That they are not a recognized country by the United Nations because of those tensions. And China really would like Taiwan under its control, would really like Taiwan underneath its control. And they have talked about not just sending its navy there to take it over, but sending every fishing boat, rowboat, naval vessel, every soldier, farmer, you name it. They will send everything and anything and everything to take Taiwan if the world would let them. And so at this point, they're just doing some provocations. It was a thought that maybe China was watching what Russia was doing in Ukraine to see if they could get away with doing stuff, seeing if they could take over China, if anyone would actually back them, or if the U.S. who has said that they would, defend alongside Taiwan. that didn't go so well, so China seems to have backed off a little bit there. And in Havana, Cuba today, a huge explosion there in Havana at the Saratoga Hotel in downtown. Ended up killing 18 people and injured another 56, including 14 children. The cause of the explosion is not known currently. It's right down here, literally right in downtown. Right in downtown. That's the capital of. That is the capital of Cuba, and that's the hotel. So, there unfortunately is a large loss of life. We don't know if it was a terrorist attack or if maybe something happened and it set off some powder or something. While something was under renovation, that could have been the thing. But we do have a couple of different things coming out of there today.
Miren, esto es un cadáver que está aquí ahora mismo. Familia, en estos momentos el pueblo ayudando al pueblo organizativo de los bomberos, el rescate. Están aquí, el pueblo está ayudando a la gente del rescate. Ahora mismo el pueblo está ayudando a la gente del rescate aquí, familia. Ángel Conce Afonso reportando desde La Habana, Cuba en directo. Familia, compartan esta directa, hermano.
So, obviously there's a very large explosion there at the Hotel Saratoga there in Havana, Cuba. And hopefully they do get to the bottom of whatever caused that massive explosion that caused such a massive amount of loss of human life there. And as we wrap up the day, we go into some more interesting news. And we always like to wrap it up with some interesting or cool news or something a little bit more uplifting, because the day is chocked full of really not such great news. A lot of the stuff that is making the news is stuff that's not always fun to talk about. But I wish I was this lucky. So this woman went to a Goodwill in Austin, Texas, bought a bust for $35, and it turned out to be a 2,000-year-old Roman bust from Germany that disappeared during World War II and is now going to be returned back to specifically Bavaria and to be put on display. But before that, it will go on display for a year in the Museum of Art there in San Antonio. That is cool. Once again, how could I not be this lucky? Look at that. It's a 2,000-year-old Roman bust. And once again, $34.99. See, I've seen people find gold bars and go metal detecting and find buried treasure from, in the UK from, the Vikings and the Anglo-Saxons. And this woman goes to Goodwill and buys a 2,000-year-old bust for $35. That's just fascinating to me how people can be that lucky. But we did get that from the Global News. If you want to check it out, it's made pretty good headlines around the world today. But I thought it was just really cool. That's not something that you get every day. That's not something you find every day. So hopefully they can find more stuff like that. Hopefully more people are finding lost pieces of ancient art. I mean, that's absolutely fascinating. And so with that, we actually wrap up all of the news for the day. And so there is a lot going on. There's a lot of developments in the world. There's a lot that is up in the air as we approach that very important May 9th that everyone is kind of bracing for. And I can tell you that for a lot of people, it will have major impacts regardless of how it goes. But there's already a war in Ukraine. Declaring the war officially probably doesn't really change anything. And I don't think a lot of Ukrainians would say otherwise. We do have some Ukrainians that work with us here on the channel, and I appreciate their help very much because they get a lot of stuff for us. And but Ukraine's been at war with Russia since 2014 in their eyes. Declaring it officially, I don't think changes much. I don't think there's any tentative victories that he could claim, that Putin could claim, but there are a lot of options for the West that do not lead to war. And a lot of people are going to talk about the threat of World War III. And there's still a lot of options that we don't know about that just haven't been taken. And I can tell that from experience, from having lived some of it during my time overseas and dealing with Russian forces in places like Syria. And there's a lot of things on the table that no one's talking about. No one knows. The government kind of holds those cards, close to their chest. So war is not. I don't think war is inevitable here, and don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. I don't think there's going to be a huge World War III. So don't let people scare you. It's not worth it. But there is a crisis, and there are crises all over the world currently ongoing. Ethiopia, and Somalia are impacted by huge droughts. 90% of people in the Tigray region require humanitarian assistance to survive, and 90% of the country of Somalia is dry from the drought. Children under the age of 5 specifically are impacted on those. So check that out. Super Typhoon Rai really tore up Southeast Asia, and they could also really use your help. That's millions of people who lost everything they have to this typhoon that could also really use your help. And of course, the big topic, Ukraine. We have a bunch of those links in the description for Ukraine, both the war effort and the humanitarian effort, and now officially the government's effort. If you wish to donate to them at United24, go check them out. It's both here on the link is in the description below, so you can donate to the country directly. And as well, all of these donation links do go to our website. We do vet all of these on our Discord. So go check out the Discord and join the community there. There's a lot of people that post a lot of things throughout the day. A lot of updates and news, not necessarily just from us, but in general from their sources and what they're getting. So come join us. Pick my brain, rack my brain. I have a lot of knowledge that it isn't really good for anything else and doesn't make for any other good conversation. So go ahead, come over, ask me questions, rack my brain for what I know, and rack everyone else's brains for what they know, because we have a lot of intelligent people there on the Discord that can answer a lot of these questions better than even I can. So with that, I appreciate you joining us for the night. I hope that you guys will join us tomorrow. Enjoy the beginning of your weekend. Once again, we will not be streaming tomorrow. We do have a prior engagement we need to go to. So don't be watching for the stream, but we will be recovering the last 48 hours on Sunday. And I hope that you guys remain safe, that your families remain safe, and that your friends remain safe. And if for whatever reason they aren't, I hope that they are able to find safety and shelter and the help that they need. And I hope to see you guys tomorrow. Have a great night, everyone. Enjoy your weekend. And we will talk to you guys Sunday night.